بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Subhanallah, it's so strange to be back here and to have a class, subhanallah, and it seems like it only happens once a year or sometimes twice a year. But it's really fantastic to be back in Newcastle and to be able to sit together with brothers who are very old friends and also some new friends, and inshallah ta'ala to sit together and to remind each other of some of the ayat of the book of Allah Azza wa Jalla and some of the ahadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's a very interesting title that we've been given. When the brothers suggested it, the brothers at the masjid suggested it, it really struck a chord with me. Manners before knowledge. And really we can probably start this topic off by saying that when the early generations used to seek knowledge, they used to seek knowledge in a very specific way. They didn't just used to randomly, like we do, take a book from the beautiful bookshelf the masjid has, just take a random book, pick it out of the shelf, read whatever you like, put it back again, tomorrow take a different book. They used to have a methodology of learning. And one of the things that really stands out among all the things that you can say about how the early generations of Muslims used to learn is that the very first thing they used to learn was the issue of al-adab or al-adab, manners and etiquettes. And for them, manners and etiquettes had more precedence than anything else after the basics they needed to be a Muslim. Like we're talking about from the voluntary things. So of course the obligatory things came first, how to pray, how to read Quran, the very basics. But we're talking about from the voluntary part of learning knowledge. From the voluntary segment of learning knowledge, the thing that got the most precedence from them were manners and etiquettes. Because really, manners and etiquettes are like the keys which open the door for you to be able to learn. And really, without them, you struggle to learn, or you struggle to learn effectively. Now, I put a condition upon the brothers in the masjid when we did this class. I said to them, we can do this topic, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, but I want to do it from a text. And that's part of, it's part of knowledge. So, if you're going to get just my thoughts on the topic, you're not going to get very far. We want to take a classical Islamic text and use it as our inspiration to talk about this topic. So we suggested, or it was suggested to me, that we choose a beautiful book by Al-Imam Al-Hafidh Ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala, Bulugh al-Maram. And this book is well translated into English. It's available very easily. I'm sure there's a copy even in the masjid library that you can benefit from. And it is a book of ahkam, or it's, to be very specific, it's a book of adillatul ahkam. It's a book of the proofs and the evidences from the sunnah for the rulings that exist in Islam. But at the very end of the book, Al-Hafidh Ibn Hajar brought a chapter, the very end of the book, called Kitabul Jami'. And we know that books are divided up into different segments. So the first or the broadest segment in a book, we call it Al-Kitab. So this is if you like, the main chapters or the segments of the book. Not even chapters, they're more like segments, or what word could we use for something that is bigger than a chapter? Sections, like a section of the book. And then within this kitab, there are abwab. So there is bab, bab, bab. These are chapters. And perhaps within them, although not in Bulugh al-Maram, or at least not much, you get fusul, fasl, like subheadings or something like that. So you have at the biggest top, you have sections, and then you have chapters, and then you have subheadings. The section that we're in right now is Kitabul Jami'. And the word kitab, by the way, this word for a section or a segment of the book, it has two meanings. One meaning everybody knows is that it's something which is written down. Kitab, something which is maktub, something written down. But the real meaning of kitab, when you go back to it, is al-jama', gathering lots of things together in one place. And this kitab is Kitabul Jami'. And al-jami' is, in the first place, it means gathering everything together. So it's the chapter at the end of the book, or the section at the end of the book, that gathers lots of miscellaneous things together. Sometimes they call it the chapter of now I'm going to try and pronounce this in English and I'm probably going to get it wrong. Of miscellany? Anyways, the chapter of miscellaneous things. And that is the sort of the end of the book where Al-Hafiz brings all of the ahadith that didn't fit anywhere else. So they didn't fit in the section on Salah, they didn't fit in the section on Zakah, they didn't fit in the section on Hajj, they didn't fit any of the sections except they were left over at the end. And so this is what Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar brings in this Kitab al-Jami'. He brings the ahadith which don't really fit anywhere else. And he brings a chapter that we want to study tonight, which is Babul Adab, the chapter of manners. Or we can say the chapter of etiquettes. The chapter of manners, or we can say the chapters of etiquettes. Now, etiquettes is actually, or al-adab is actually a big topic. And Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar doesn't mean all of them. What he means is al-adab al-shara', Islamic etiquettes. And this has lots of different words for it in Arabic, but it is often described as makarim al-akhlaq, good manners, good etiquettes, having a noble way of dealing with people. And it's also called mahasin al-a'mal, the beautification, almost the beautiful things in the deeds that you do. And it is what it is right for a person to do and what it's right for a person to leave. So it deals with things you should do and things you shouldn't do. And the scholars have authored many books just on this topic. Many books. There is Al-Adab Al-Shar'iyya by Muflih. There is Manzumatul Adab and Sharh al-Manzuma, which is a well-known poem on the topic of adab, which we're going to touch upon. And there are many books that have been written. There are hundreds and hundreds of books that have been written on the topic of manners and things the way we should behave and the way we shouldn't behave in terms of what the Sharia advises us to do. And Bulugh al-Maram is a book which deals with ahadith al-ahkam. So we're going to primarily be looking at ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. We won't finish them all tonight, but we'll try and finish perhaps 5, between 5 and 10 inshallah. And we try to understand the etiquettes and the manners that a Muslim is required to have. And we know that Islam has given a great attention to this because of the description of the manners of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You, O Muhammad, are on the highest, the greatest standard of character. Your manners and your character and the way you deal with people. And bear in mind that manners, and I want to make this clear, it's not just about dealing with people. Good manners starts with good manners towards Allah Azza wa Jal. The way you deal, the way you interact, and the way you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the height of good manners. And it's the height of bad manners to be ungrateful and disrespectful towards Allah Azza wa Jal. But the way you deal with, or the way your manners towards Allah, your manners towards the people, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, the Prophet ﷺ was upon the highest standard of character. So we're going to do our first hadith, and our first hadith is a hadith narrated by Imam Muslim عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حق المسلم على المسلم ست إذا لقيته فسلم عليه وإذا دعاك فأجبه وإذا استنصحك فانصح وإذا عطس فحمد الله فشمته وإذا مرض فعده وإذا مات فاتبعه رواه Muslim. This first hadith is a hadith from the illustrious companion Abdurrahman bin Sakhr al-Dawsi radiyallahu anhu, commonly known by his kunya Abu Hurairah. He said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the right of every Muslim over every other Muslim is 6 things. The right of every Muslim, and we just cover the translation first and we'll explain it. If you meet him, give him the salam. And if he invites you, answer him. And if he seeks your advice, give him advice. And if he sneezes and praises Allah, then maybe we could say invoke blessings for him. We're going to talk about what that means specifically. And if he is sick, visit him. And if he dies, follow his funeral procession. And the hadith is narrated by Al-Imam Muslim. Muslims have a huge set of rights over each other. Allah Azza wa Jal said, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. And this has 2 meanings, by the way. Maybe we don't pick this up all the time. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. إِنَّمَا, like we learn in Arabic grammar, is min adat al-hasr. It's a grammatical construct which limits things. It says the only one of these is in this. Now Allah Azza wa Jalla used 2 words, al-mu'minun and ikhwa, believers and brothers. But it applies both ways, and the scholars of tafsir apply it both ways. The only real brotherhood is in Islam. And the only real Muslims are those who have brotherhood among themselves. So you can apply it both ways, and you can say that the only real brotherhood is the brotherhood of Islam. The brotherhood of Islam is more important than the brotherhood of a nasab, of blood, of family ties. And that's why you see, for example, Mus'ab ibn Umair radiallahu anhu in the Battle of Badr, when his brother was captured and he said to him, Ya akhi, my brother, called out to Mus'ab, the captured brother, the non-Muslim. He said, Ya akhi, my brother. He said, you're not my brother today. This is my brother. This man from the Ansar is my brother. Because the brotherhood of Islam supersedes the brotherhood of an-nasab, of family ties and blood. A Muslim has rights over another Muslim, and there are 6 rights that are mentioned here. The first right, when you meet him, give him the salam. One of the most important adab shar'iyya that we have in Islam is the adab of giving the salam. The minimum that you can give is to say Assalamu alaykum. Assalamu alaykum. And the middle is to say Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah. And the longer version is to say Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There are some additions beyond that, but that is the basic sort of formula of the salam. And in return, you have to return equal or better. Equal or better. So if someone says to you Assalamu alaykum, the minimum standard is to say wa alaykum as-salam. But you can add wa alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi, or you can add wa alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If a person says to you Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, you don't have a choice. You have to respond with the full wa alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, because Allah Azza wa Jalla said وَإِذَا حُيِّيتُم بِتَحِيَّةٍ فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنَ مِنْهَا أَوْ رُدُّوهَا. if you are greeted with a greeting, then respond with a greeting that is better or with an equal greeting to the one that you were given. Beginning with the salam is sunnatun mu'akkada. It is a highly recommended sunnah, but it's not obligatory to give the salam in the first time. But responding to the salam is wajib. So if somebody gives salam to you, it is an obligation for you to give salam to them. But when you first meet someone, it's a highly recommended sunnah. It's not an obligation for you to give salam to them. And we're going to hear, this is one of my real pet hates, so I'm going to give you guys a hard time over this, about the times when we should not give the salam. Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, Hafidhahullah, he mentions 14 instances where you should not, where it is makruh to give the salam. You should not give the salam. And many people are not aware of this. So what does it mean? What does it mean to begin with the salam? Or what does it mean to give the salam? As-salam is one of the names of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because in the tashahhud, in the beginning, the Muslims used to say, As-salamu ala Allah. Salam upon Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, don't say this. Inna Allah huwa salam wa minhu salam. Allah is as-salam and salam comes from Allah. And salam, it means as-salama. It means to be safe. Min kulli aybin wa naqs. From every deficiency and every flaw. That's what it means to have salam, to say salam, to be safe from everything that would take away from your honor. Everything that would take away from your happiness, your status, your position. So who is the one that keeps you safe? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is why Allah Azza wa Jal is the salam. He is the source of safety and security. Perhaps this is a good translation of the word as-salam. The source of safety and security. So there are two opinions among the scholars when you give salam to somebody. What do you actually mean? One of them is that what you mean is you're invoking the name of Allah upon them. So you're almost saying, I greet you with the name of Allah, as-salam. And the second opinion is that you're making dua for them, like the common statement people say, Sallamak Allah. Meaning, may Allah keep you safe and happy and secure. Sallamak Allah. And that this is the meaning of Assalamu alaikum. You are making dua for salam, for safety and security to come to descend upon that person in the dunya and the akhirah. And when you know the value of the salam, you suddenly feel more like, you feel like saying it a bit more. When you don't know the value of the salam, it's Assalamu alaikum. When you know the value of the salam, I want to say to people, may Allah Azza wa Jal keep you safe from everything that would cause you harm or anything that would affect your honor and your happiness and your success in the dunya or the akhirah. Assalamu alaikum. Wa rahmatullahi, and the mercy of Allah. Wa barakatuhu, and His blessings. What a dua you make for that person. And you remind them that Allah is as-salam. Allah is the one that you're seeking this from. And you're not going to get salam from anyone else or anything else. You're only going to get the salam from as-salam, from Allah Azza wa Jal, who is as-salam. And this saves a person from hatred. It stops the Muslims. Naturally things will happen between people. Someone's going to stop talking to somebody. Someone's going to get upset with somebody. When you give the salam, all those feelings go out of a person's heart. And that's why it's a right of a Muslim. And when two people are not talking to one another, the Prophet ﷺ said, وَخَيْرُهُمَا الَّذِي يَبْدَأُ بِالسَّلَامِ. The better of the two that don't talk to each other, the best one is the first one to give salam to his brother. This is the better of the two people. But like we said, as we said, that the salam has some fiqh to it. And wallahi, I would love to even stop on just this because we would just do the salam today. But we want to cover some more etiquettes, more than just the salam. Otherwise, there are many etiquettes with regard to the salam. Who should give salam to the younger person should begin with towards the older person. The person standing towards the one who is sitting. The person who is walking towards the one who is still. The single person towards the group. and all of the rulings of the salam. But one thing I think is really important to mention, and I really wanted to give just a few minutes to talk about it, is that a lot of people maybe don't think or don't reflect upon the fact that there are times when you should not give the salam. And I think people do it out of a love for the salam, but there are times, and I'll read you as many as I can before we run out of time. So the first one the Shaykh mentions is, he said that the salam is disliked for the one who is mutahaddith. He is speaking to someone else. So you see your brother in a conversation with someone, and he's engaged in conversation, and you go in the middle of that conversation and you say, Salamu alaikum, brother. This is disliked by Allah Azza wa Jalla. You are disturbing this person from the salam. And remember, it's not fard for you to give him the salam. You're disturbing him. He's in the middle of a conversation. Now he has to stop his conversation. And it's wajib for him to say, Wa alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now imagine when that happens 3, 4, 5 times in a conversation. This happens to me all the time. I'm in the middle of a conversation with a brother, explain something important to him. And 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people go past me and interrupt and say, Assalamu alaikum. This is not from the fiqh of a person. The second one, the Shaykh said, مُتَشَاغِلٌ بِالذِّكْرِ. The one who is busy remembering Allah. Subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. Salamu alaikum. It's not the right time to say salam to this person. Let him finish his dhikr and then give him the salam. The third one, the one who is busy with the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's narrating a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أنه قال سلام عليكم وعليكم السلام. This can actually lead to the hadith being misunderstood. Because you can actually be in the middle of transmitting a hadith and you end up saying wa alaykum as-salam. And so this could become a reason for the hadith idraj, the hadith to be mixed up, and a hadith to get mixed into another hadith, and the people get confused. The fourth one, as-salamu ala al-khatib غير خطبة الجمعة فخطبة الجمعة يحرم الكلام فيها. So in the khutbah of Jum'ah, it's even worse. But in general, you don't give salam to the one who is giving a lecture, the one who is speaking, the one who is giving a sermon to the people. People come in, Assalamu alaikum. Everybody has to stop, Wa alaikum assalam. And the Shaykh continues to mention many things. He mentions, and they're very similar. He mentions the one giving a dars on the Quran, the one who is reading the Quran, the one who is advising someone and admonishing them, the one who is revising Islamic knowledge, the mu'adhin, the one who is praying. And someone may say, well, but the one who is praying, isn't there a ruling that if someone gives you salam and you show a sign with your hand? But the point is, that is if someone gives you the salam. But it's not from fiqh that you see somebody praying and you say to them, Ya Muhammad, salamu alaikum. No, it's not from the fiqh of a person that you do this when a person is praying. He's praying, leave him. Now you may not have seen he's praying, and you may have said salamu alaikum. In this case, he can raise his hand as a sign that I'm not cutting you off, I'm praying. So he can sort of give you salam with his hand while he's praying. But it's not right that you give him salam when he's praying in the first place. And there are other ones. Some people said when someone is busy eating, his mouth is full. The Shaykh mentioned this. He's eating and his mouth is full. He has to. It's very inconvenient for him. And they mentioned the one who's fighting in war, and to mention a number of other times. But I think, to be honest, this is actually, all of this is common sense. That you don't give salam to the person that when you give them the salam, this is an inconvenience and a hardship for them to reply. The one who is busy with something, instead you wait and you observe when that person is free, and then you give them the salam when they have a proper time to respond to it. And like I said, there's a lot of things we could have talked about this, but we want to continue. إِذَا دَعَاكَ فَأَجِبْهُ. There are two types of invitation that are intended in this second part of the hadith. If he invites you, answer him. The first is an obligation, and that is the invitation to a walima. As for the invitation to anything else, which is not a walima, like for example, if you come around my house and eat, then this is mustahab. It's recommended, or mustahabba. It is recommended for you to accept the invitation. However, are there any restrictions to this? Yes, because remember, the Sharia is not one hadith. The Sharia is a whole, and this is a very important lesson for all of us. The Sharia of Islam is a whole. It is not little ahadith that you take and you ignore the rest. أَفَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْضِ الْكِتَابِ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضِ. Do you believe in some of the book but you don't believe in the rest of the book? You have to take the whole Quran. So there are a couple of things here. First of all, if you have already promised someone else that you will attend. It's not that the person says, this is my haqq al-Muslim al-Muslim. You say, okay, but it was also the haqq of the other person and they were there first. Or you have an important appointment, you would suffer severely or seriously if you didn't accept it. Likewise, and this is the most common one, if the invitation contains something which is haram. So the invitation, they say, please come to my birthday party. It's in this pub where the people are going to be serving alcohol and haram food and so on. This person, we don't have to accept the invitation, even if it's the right of a Muslim, because the other rulings of the Sharia supersede this and override it because they're asking you to come to something which is haram. However, there's a middle situation. What if they invite you to come to something which is haram, but you believe that you have a certain presence, a certain hayba, when you come in, the people will switch off the haram or stop doing the haram. Then the scholars say it is permissible to go from the point of view of al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa-nahy anil-munkar, telling people to do good and stopping people from doing bad. That you go in and when you go in, for example, it's a wedding and it's going to be mixed and whatever, but when you go in, the women put the hijab on, the music goes off, and because you have a certain presence, they feel shy of you. Okay? They should feel shy of Allah Azza wa Jal, but they feel somewhat shy of you as a person, and so for that reason they switch it off. There is no harm in you going there in order to encourage people to do good. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. The third right. إِذَا اسْتَنصَحَكَ فَانصَحْ. If he asks your advice, give him advice. The Prophet ﷺ said, الدين النصيحة. This religion is giving advice. قالوا لمن يا رسول الله? He said, to whom, O Messenger of Allah? قال لله ولكتابه ولرسوله ولأئمة المسلمين وعامتهم. The hadith is narrated by Imam Muslim and others. This religion is good advice. They said, to whom, O Messenger of Allah? He said, to Allah and His book and His Messenger, and to the leaders of the Muslims and their general people. So this religion is about giving good advice. And that is that when someone asks you for advice, you give them the advice. Now, we're going to come later to an important point here. Is that, when you give them advice, this doesn't mean that you speak without knowledge, or that you just randomly tell them, what is in your heart. But that if you have something to say, you have something that you want to share, that you don't conceal that from them. That you do, and what is really nasiha? And this is the hadith of Deen al-Nasiha, and some people would say, how can I give nasiha to Allah? Nasiha in reality is to act sincerely in the best interests of the other person. This is what a nasiha is to act sincerely in the best interests of the person you are giving nasiha to. So if you're giving nasiha to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to act in what is in his interest, and what is in accordance with what he wanted, what is good for him, what he wanted you to do and what he conveyed for you to do, and what will support his cause and the religion that he came with. Because acting in a person's interest and acting for a person on behalf of a person sincerely, this is nasihah. When you act on behalf of Allah Azza wa Jal in something which Allah has commanded you to do, this is nasihah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when a person asks you for advice, you want to give that person sincere advice, genuine advice. Really be as if you were in their shoes. What would you want someone to say to you at that time? But that nasihah doesn't make the haram halal or the halal haram. It's not the case that me saying to you that I think you should do this means that this is now a shar'i ruling or a fatwa. It's not like that, and that's an important point. It's important. وَإِذَا عَطَسَ فَحَمِدَ اللَّهَ فَشَمِّتْهُ. And if he sneezes and praises Allah, then say to him, يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ. And if you say to him, يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ, then the sunnah is for him to say to you, يَهْدِيكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيُصْلِحُ بَالَكُمْ. Question here, why do we praise Allah when we sneeze? Because sneezing is a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jalla. We're actually removing something which is causing us, is causing us irritation, is causing us difficulty, is causing us, some degree of hardship or some degree of harm. And when we remove that, we praise Allah Azza wa Jalla. It's part of praising Allah for the blessings big and small. Moving on, just so that we can finish the hadith and go to the next hadith. وَإِذَا مَرِضَ فَعُدْهُ. If the person becomes sick, visit them. Visiting the sick person is a right of a Muslim. And it's something, again, we don't really do very much. Very few of us do. Very few of us. First of all, to visit a sick person, you have to know your brother's situation. You can't be a person who is just nafsi, myself, and they go to the masjid, they don't know what anyone else is going through. If you know your brother's not well, go and visit him. Go and visit him. And when you visit him, one of the etiquettes and the manners is that you don't make him worry. As long as you don't see that he's on death's door. If you see he's on death's door, you have to remind him, La ilaha illallah. لَقِّنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ La ilaha illallah. Remind the dying person of La ilaha illallah. But you don't go to him and say, Wallah, Muhammad, you look ill. Wallah, I don't know, subhanallah, maybe you will not survive this. I find you are really ill. Wallah, I've never seen you this low, your temperature, astaghfirullah. And you start making him worried. He was okay, he was feeling a little bit better, but after he saw you, now he thinks he's gonna die. Instead, you say to him, mashallah, it's okay, la ba'sa tahuran, inshallah, it's a purification for you. Allah will make you better. You'll be back to yourself in a couple of days. Is there anything you need? You make him feel. There is a weak hadith in this regard. The hadith is not authentic. But the hadith says that when you visit a person, make him نفسوه في الأجل, make him feel like he's going to live a long time. This doesn't refute anything from qadr. It's the hadith, that it doesn't refute anything from qadr. The hadith is weak in any case, but you don't want to make a person feel as though they are, that they are worse than they are, or even make them feel that they are the same as they are. You want them to feel positive about themselves. You want to go there, remind them, and you want them to feel like they have the support of their brothers around them. You came to visit, how are you, akhi? You okay? I hope you're well. Now you look okay, inshallah, you'll be fine, I'm sure in a few days. Is there anything you need from us? Can we help you with anything? That makes the brotherhood of Islam, it makes people love each other. And that's the importance of good manners in Islam. As for if you see that the person is really on death's door, and you see that you really feel the person is going to die, then in this case you will remind them to say La ilaha illallah, to make tawbah, to turn back to Allah Azza wa Jal, because this is a slightly different situation. And if the person dies, then follow their janazah. This is a very significant point. Because it tells us that the rights of the Muslim don't even stop when the Muslim dies. Subhanallah. Even when a Muslim passes away, the rights of the Muslim don't stop. And there's no doubt that you attend the janazah and you follow the janazah. Now it's interesting, the Prophet ﷺ did not say, وَإِذَا مَاتَ فَصَلِّ عَلَى جَنَازَتِهِ. Pray over his janazah. He said, فَاتَّبِعْ. Follow it to the graveyard. So it's not just that you pray and you leave. You pray and you go to the graveyard and you follow that person until they're placed into the grave, and you make dua for them. You cover their grave. You put your 3 handfuls of dirt in, and you follow it to the end. And it just shows you how great the rights of a Muslim are, that the Muslim's rights don't even stop when they die. So a Muslim is required to stick to these 6 requirements with all of his brothers, not just with those people that he is close with. Because typically we see ourselves as Muslims, what we do is, with the people we're close with, we follow all 6. My friend, when he invites me, I come. When he gives salam, I meet him, I give him salam, and I probably even hug him as well. If he gets sick, I'm there. But the person I don't know, he invites me, I say, okay, well, maybe, inshallah, maybe sometime. He gives me salam, maybe I don't give him salam when I see him. It's important that we behave towards this with every single Muslim. And not just those Muslims that we are close to or those Muslims that we like. Now, it is difficult in these days that sometimes you can't tell if somebody is a Muslim. Now, I mean outside of the masjid. Obviously, in the masjid, it's easy. But outside of the masjid, when I'm in the UAE, sometimes people walk past me in the street, and the person doesn't unfortunately look like a Muslim, in the sense that there's no outward sign that tells me this person is a Muslim. I can't see anything on them that would indicate they are a Muslim. So in this case, I remain silent, because it's not obligatory for me to give the salam. But in general, if you know somebody is a Muslim, you give the salam to those who you know and those that you don't know. You don't just restrict it to the people that you know. And this indicates the brotherhood that exists among the Muslims. Our next hadith, it's a beautiful etiquette in our next hadith. It's also a hadith of Abi Hurairah رضي الله عنه أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم انظروا إلى من هو أسفل منكم ولا تنظروا إلى من هو فوقكم فهو أجدر أن لا تزدروا نعمة الله عليكم متفق عليه. From Abi Hurairah رضي الله عنه, the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, look at those who are less fortunate than you, and don't look at those who are above you. This is more likely that you will not neglect, or you will not be negligent of the blessings that Allah has given you. This is a beautiful hadith which has an important explanation to it. This hadith is talking about how we behave in the dunya. And this dunya, people in the dunya are of different levels in this world. There are people who have been given a lot of money, a lot of comfort, a lot of wealth, property, cars, businesses, and so on. And there are people who have virtually nothing, living in almost poverty. How should we behave towards our brother Muslims when we see that we are not of one, we don't believe in a like a sort of a communist ideal that actually, the rich guy, he should give away all of his property, and the poor people, we should all be made exactly the same, and we should all have the same bank balance, and we should all drive exactly the same car and live in exactly the same house, measured that we all have the same number of square feet. And we don't live in this system. This is not what Allah Azza wa Jalla has decreed for us. But how should we behave to maintain the brotherhood of the Muslims, and to stop jealousy towards one another, and to stop also, feeling negative, or feeling sort of almost feeling that why hasn't Allah given this to me? What we do is we look at those less fortunate. We don't look at those who are more fortunate. So we don't look at the person who has more than me. We look at the person who has less than me. And if I look at the person who has less than me, I start feeling good about myself. I start saying, Wallah, subhanAllah, I have a bigger house than that person. I have a nicer car than that person. I have more money than that person. Wallah, I'm blessed. Whereas if I look at the person with more than me, it doesn't matter how rich I would be. Even you get people who are, and in fact, I was reading this recently about a multi-billionaire who met recently with someone. He met with might have been a journalist or something like that, and he was complaining about how little money he has and how someone else is more rich than him. Why? Because he has whatever, $2 billion in assets. But there's someone who's got 40. There's someone who's got 70. There's someone who's got 72. There's someone who's got 75. And ultimately, you're not going to stop if you're looking at the people who have more than you. But if you looked at the people who have less than you, you would start feeling really content with what you had. But this is in the dunya, and the reverse is true in the deen. In the religion, you don't look at those who are less than you. Why? Because you start feeling comfortable. Alhamdulillah. I look at all the people who don't even believe in Allah. Alhamdulillah, I'm a Muslim, so I feel totally relaxed with myself and happy and confident with myself. That's not the correct way. Look at the people who are better than you, and you'll realize that you haven't achieved anything. You look at what some of the scholars of Islam achieved in the time between Dhuhr and Asr, and you think, in my lifetime, thus far, in 35, 36 years, I haven't achieved what one of those guys achieved between Dhuhr and Asr. You remember that the Prophet ﷺ said, if the one of you gave the mountain of Uhud in gold, and he said this to the Sahaba, it would not equal the handful of one of them, meaning Abu Bakr and the likes of Abu Bakr, and not even a half of it. Subhanallah. And I give the mountain of, not me, one of the later Sahaba gives the mountain of Uhud in gold, it's not equal to half a handful that Abu Bakr gives. So what about me? And if I give the dunya in gold, it would not be equal to half a handful that Abu Bakr gave. You see, subhanAllah, we look at them and we get inspired that what these people did in hours, in days, we don't want to do in our entire life. And then you start to feel, right, I need to work harder. I need to do more. I need to push myself more. Even among students, you try to spend yourself time around people more knowledgeable than you. If you spend time around people who are less knowledgeable than you all the time, what happens? You start feeling knowledgeable. Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me with ilm. Alhamdulillah. Because why? Because you're spending time around people who are less knowledgeable than you. But if you spend time around people more knowledgeable than you, start thinking, well, I'm jahil, I'm ignorant. These people are so knowledgeable. So in the deen, you look at those who have more than you, and you feel inspired. And in the dunya, you look at those who have less than you. So you don't feel ungrateful to Allah for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. We now have the hadith of An-Nawas ibn Sim'an or ibn Sam'an, two ways of reading his name. أنه قال سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن البر والإثم فقال البر حسن الخلق والإثم ما حاك في صدرك وكرهت أن يطلع عليه الناس أخرجه مسلم. This is the hadith of An-Nawas ibn Sam'an or ibn Sim'an, that he said, I asked the Messenger of Allah ﷺ about al-birr and about al-ithm. Now, al-birr is one of those difficult words. And why it's difficult is, it's a word that changes its meaning depending on what it's used for. So when al-birr is used on its own, then al-birr means every kind of good. And when al-birr is used with a taqwa, then al-birr means doing good things, and a taqwa means avoiding bad things. So al-birr, it could be more general or more specific. If it's more general, it means everything good, every kind of good thing. Like the scholars say, kalimatun jami'ah. تجمع خصال الخير كلها. It is a comprehensive term that gathers every single attribute and every single characteristic of good in it. And like I said, when it comes with taqwa, then the bir part is the doing good and the taqwa is avoiding the bad. But when taqwa comes on its own, it means both, and when bir comes on its own, it means both. Here we have al-bir wal-ithm. So al-bir is every kind of good and al-ithm is every kind of sin. The Prophet ﷺ told us, al-birru husnul khuluq. Every kind of good can be found in having good manners. Now, does that exclude worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal alone? No, because worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal alone is part of good manners with Allah. Good manners are good manners towards the people and good manners with Allah Azza wa Jal. Al-birr husnul khuluq. Okay, this statement, al-birru husnul khuluq, does it mean that there is no good except in good manners? No. It means that good manners are one of the most important features of doing good. It's the same as saying Al-Hajju Arafah. Hajj is Arafah. طيب, if I go to Hajj and I do Arafah and I don't do anything else, is my Hajj accepted? I missed pillars of the Hajj, Tawaf, Sa'i. I missed wajibat of the Hajj, like Tawaf al-Wada'. I can't just go to Arafah and go home. Don't stone any jamarat, don't stay in Mina, I just go to Arafah and go home. But the Prophet ﷺ said, Hajj Arafah, Hajj is Arafah. Meaning Hajj is the most important part of Arafah. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ad-du'a'u ibadah. Or Ad-du'a'u huwa al-ibadah. Dua is worship. Is the core of worship. Does that mean there is no act of worship apart from dua? No, there is dua, there is prayer, there is dhikr, there is hope, there is fear, there are many, many types of worship. But dua is perhaps one of the greatest or the most significant. And likewise here we have al-birru husnul khuluq. It doesn't mean that there is no good apart from in good manners, but it means that the most significant good, or one of the most significant acts of good that a person can do, and attributes of good, is to have good manners. And good manners covers multiple things. It covers the way that you deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards Allah Azza wa Jal, and it covers the way that you deal with people, with other people. And Allah Azza wa Jal has made this act of good manners a part of humans and something we can incorporate into our character and into our nature. Some people are born with more of it than others. And some people are naturally good-mannered more than others. But everyone can train themselves to be good-mannered. And we know that good manners was a sign and a characteristic of our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You are upon a great high standard of character. What about sin then? Sin here is the opposite to al-bir. So al-bir here is everything that is good, and sin is everything that is bad. The Prophet ﷺ first of all described it as two things. He said, مَا حَاكَ فِي صَدْرِكَ. That which is, it's uncomfortable in your chest. You know, it rattles around inside your chest. You don't feel comfortable with it. And you are shy. وَكَرِهْتَ. You dislike. أَنْ يَطَّلِعَ عَلَيْهِ النَّاسِ. You dislike that people should see you doing it. Okay, there is something extremely important in this hadith about the definition of sin. And it's the same thing in the hadith, istafti qalbak. seek a fatwa from your heart. Is this hadith saying that we define sin by how we feel? No. In terms of what is a sin or what isn't a sin, we are first of all talking about what the Sharia says. What Allah says is a sin is a sin. And what Allah says is not a sin is not a sin, despite how you feel about it. However, after that, there are some areas where you don't have knowledge or you don't have information about whether it's a sin or not. But there is a natural response to a sin inside of a person who is naturally is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are two issues here that we have to be careful of. The first one is that we don't define sin by what our heart says. The Sharia defines for us what is halal and what is haram. However, there are times when we don't have access to it, or we don't understand it, or we don't know whether what we're doing right now falls under the thing that Allah said is haram or not. We know that riba is haram, but we don't know whether what I'm doing right now, is it riba or is it not riba? That's the first part. The second part is the person has to be a person whose self is inclined or is in line with the fitrah, with their natural inclination. You can't have a person who has disobeyed Allah to the point where disobeying Allah is their normal behavior. They do it with everybody all the time, 24/7, they're disobeying Allah. And then you say to them, istafti qalbak, ask your heart. You're going to say, my heart says halal, yalla, bismillah, let's go. Because for that person, their heart is corrupt. But for the person whose heart is sincere, they're not quite sure if it's haram or not. If you feel that thing in your chest, if you don't feel right about it, and it's something that you would be shy for people to see you doing, then this is something which it is something you should avoid and you should keep away from. Even if you don't have an evidence, a clear evidence that this is haram in Islam. We have to be clear about these ahadith, because people use these ahadith in the wrong way. They use it to say, my heart defines the halal and the haram. Your heart doesn't define the halal and the haram. But sometimes you're in a situation where you don't know whether what you're doing right now is that haram mentioned in the Quran or it's not that haram mentioned in the Quran. And if you are a person who is generally obedient to Allah and generally, following the natural sort of behavior of a Muslim, then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, you will feel, if it's wrong, you'll feel something in your heart. You feel something's not right, and you would be shy for people to see you doing that. And that's why sometimes people will lie to themselves a bit. They will say, oh, there's nothing wrong with that, there's nothing wrong with me doing this. But then you see this person does it very secretly. They're like, don't let anybody see what I'm doing. They don't want people to see it. That's a sign that something is sinful. Shaykh Salih, he said, the first thing that we have is al-adillah al-shar'iyya, we have the Islamic proofs, and the second thing, if the Islamic proofs are not clear to us, we go back to ourselves and we find in ourselves an evidence as to whether this is something that we should be doing or whether it's something that we shouldn't be doing. Jenny, we'll cover maybe perhaps one more hadith or two, just being conscious of the time. وعن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كنتم ثلاثة فلا يتناجى اثنان دون الآخر حتى تختلطوا بالناس من أجل أن ذلك يحزنهم متفق عليه واللفظ لمسلم. From Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, if you are three people, then don't let two of you have a private conversation without the other one until you mix with the people. This hadith has a number of benefits. From the benefits is that we always are conscious of how our brothers feel about the way that we behave. So it may be that there are three people, you're walking together, and you take two of the people may speak in a different language. The third one doesn't know. Or they may, pull each other to the side and say, let's talk to you privately. What comes into the heart of that person? The third person thinks they're talking about me, they want to say something about me, they're making fun of me, and the shaitan puts something between them. And then the brothers start to fight against each other and dislike each other, and there are bad feelings, and then, a lot of things happen. The number here, about 2 and 3, is not a number that has a mafhum. It doesn't have a particular application. What it means is that you don't leave one person out of the conversation. If it's 4 and 5, 6 and 7, 8 and 9, but you don't leave one person out of the conversation until you are in a mixed gathering. When you're in a mixed gathering with everybody there, it doesn't matter if 2 people speak in one language or 2 people have a private conversation. If everyone is talking to everyone else, if you are like 9 people or 10 people and everyone is talking to everyone else, I can have a conversation in Arabic with someone here, in English with someone here, because everybody is mixed together. But in a case where there are people and one person is left excluded by themselves and they don't understand what's being said, or they don't know, they can't hear what's being said, then we bear in mind the feelings of other people. And this is one of the greatest signs of manners in anybody, is that you empathize with how other people feel. How would that person feel if I said this? I can make a joke. I can make them, I can make people laugh. But how would that make that person feel? How would that person feel? And that's a fundamental part of how Muslims are supposed to behave, the etiquettes of a Muslim, is that you think about the impact of what you do on your brothers and sisters in Islam, and you think about the way people might feel excluded. And I want to highlight something here, if I may, with regard to new Muslims, because we often do this with new Muslims without thinking. I mean, mashallah, this masjid is very good. We have a lot of new Muslims in the masjid, and it's very welcoming. But it is something that we do and have done in the past. I have experienced it myself, that a new Muslim can feel very excluded by the fact that maybe conversations going on in Arabic, maybe private conversation, maybe they just sat alone at the back with nobody talking to them. It's very important that we don't exclude people, and we bring people into the conversation. We make people feel that they are our brothers in Islam. This is extremely important. It's from the etiquettes of a Muslim as a whole. Our next hadith, وعن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يقيم الرجل من مجلسه ثم يجلس فيه ولكن تفسحوا وتوسعوا متفق عليه. From Ibn Umar رضي الله عنهما, that he said, the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, don't let a man make another person stand up and then sit in his place. So here we have an etiquette. But again, this etiquette is specific, but it can be made general. So this etiquette is that you basically pull somebody up and sit in their place. Or you stand someone up and you sit in their place. Or you say, brother, could you mind just bringing this glass of water for me? And when he goes to get up, you go and sit in his place. Why do you think that's important in Islam? Because at the end of the day, it's all about preserving brotherhood and good thoughts of each other, and making people know that they are respected and they're honored, and the love that you have for them as your brother in Islam, that you don't let somebody, you don't just do that. And similar things, you can make qiyas, taking someone's parking space. It's exactly the same thing. That somebody goes and you just pull in and take their parking space. This is exactly the same thing. You're basically taking someone else's space. And especially in a gathering where somebody might, they've sat down, they've got a space, it's filling up, and they're comfortable where they are, they stand up and then you go and grab their seat. It's not befitting for the Muslim. Now you may do it accidentally, it happens, sometimes accidentally. You didn't realize someone was sitting there, they went to the bathroom and you just came in, you met everyone, you sat down. But the other brother should say, there was a brother sitting here, he's coming back. This is important, inshallah. But what should you do? You should make space. And you should widen the circle. You should, if there's a circle of people all sitting together, let the people widen the circle. Make it a bit bigger. Be inclusive. Don't let somebody sit behind outside of the circle and they can't find any space. But don't let them sit in the space of someone else either. This is even applied in the Salah. The hadith that is mentioned earlier on in Bulugh al-Maram, that a person doesn't lead another person in prayer in their place of authority. So when you have an imam of the masjid, you don't come and say, I know more Quran than you, I'm going to lead the people in prayer. You let the imam lead the people in prayer, regardless of who is in the congregation. Unless the imam chooses someone and says, go on, lead the people in the prayer. Likewise, a person at home, a man who is at home in his house, you don't come into his house and lead him in prayer. You ask him to lead, and if he says to you, no, I would like you to lead in prayer, then you lead. And you don't sit in a person's special seat. People have like a space, like in traditional English culture, we would say the head of the table. Like the space, there's a space on the table, the head of the table is usually for the head of the family. And you come in and you just, plonk yourself down on the head of the table. Doesn't mean that he was sitting there, but it maybe means that that person was, this is where they usually sit, or they have a favorite armchair. You don't go and sit in their space. This is part of the etiquettes of the religion of Islam. So there are many other etiquettes that Hafid mentions. I'm going to perhaps cover a couple more, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But all of these etiquettes you can see something about them. They're all quite small things. They're all small things. You give people salam, you don't sit in people's seat, you if they invite you, you come. But the collective effect of those good manners is immense. Really. The collective effect is huge. And if you do it, really you become from among the most beloved of the people to Allah Azza wa Jal, and from among the most beloved of the people among other people, because of these good manners. How many people were guided to Islam because the Prophet ﷺ behaved with them with good manners? Now that doesn't mean the only way we give da'wah is just good manners, like the only thing we care about is just having good manners with people. We are, for us, we are careful that we tell people about Islam and we share the message of Islam with people. But good manners is what brings people often to Islam. The way you deal with people, the way you smile at them, the way you behave towards them, the kindness you show them, the good words you give to them. Good manners is extremely important. And when we said good manners comes before knowledge, I guess what there were two things that I wanted to highlight in that. The first one, with regard to good manners coming before knowledge, is that the first branch of knowledge that you learn out of the voluntary knowledge, that not the obligatory knowledge, but the first element you learn is you learn good manners. You learn how to learn. You learn the manners of a student. How should a student behave? How should a student respect their teacher? How should the student ask questions? How should the student share with the other students in the class? How should the student read? How should the student make notes? How should the student come to the class early? And you learn these manners and mannerisms and etiquettes so that your studies can be most effective. That's one aspect of it. And it's also from the point of view of the fact that these good manners that we learn, these are actually what facilitate us to be able to achieve knowledge, to be able to gain knowledge. It's learning these manners. And also it leads you to another point, which is that really the implementation of knowledge is the purpose of learning. So how can a person learn Islamic knowledge and learn ahadith and ayat and learn many things, but then that person doesn't behave in a good way, they have bad manners? What is the effect of that on them and on the others around them? On them themselves, they start feeling, they're like a person who doesn't implement the knowledge they have. And on the other side, towards other people, people start to hate knowledge because of them. People start to say, they dislike knowledge. They say, I don't want to learn. You see, this is what all religious people are like. And they start calling you names about how, you guys think you're religious, but you don't behave. And subhanAllah, how many times now do we see a time where we live in an age where non-Muslims, Zahira, not really, but in terms of what they show very good manners with the people. They show terrible manners with Allah, but they show very good manners with the people. And then we start, to think that, well, maybe our ways are backward. Maybe we need to embrace the ways of these people. But in reality, we've forgotten the legacy of Islam in terms of good manners. And if we get that back again, we'll actually see the beauty of Islam, and that really all good manners came from Islam. All good manners, all good, all birr, all types of good, it came from the religion of Islam. So we have everything we need, and these are just a few good manners. But I really want to encourage you guys to not just think about them individually, like not just think about giving salam and these type of things, but to think generally. How does it feel to exclude someone? How can I include more people? How can I be more friendly? How can I be more kind? How can I be more considerate? How can I give up my rights for other people? وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. They give up their rights for other people. They give up what's theirs for others. How can I be a person that's more approachable, that's easier to get on with, that doesn't cut off from people, that is patient with people? These are all part of the manners of a Muslim. And when you look at the manners of the Prophet ﷺ, you see these manners embodied in him. And that's why I wanted to conclude with the hadith. Some of the scholars said that the hadith has a weakness in it, but in general, that the meaning of the hadith is correct. It's the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, when she was asked about the Prophet ﷺ and his manners. And she said that his manners were those of the Quran. In reality, that's how the Prophet was. He was like all of the rulings of the Quran and all of the manners that the Quran tell you to have. It was embodied in him, and he put it into practice, and he lived it. And that's how we should be. We have the Quran to follow, we have the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to follow. We can implement it in our lives. We can try to have those manners and those etiquettes and that consideration for other people and that care. And not to forget the manners towards Allah. Because we don't want to become like the atheists who, at the end of the day, they talk about how they excel in manners. But they are the worst of people towards Allah Azza wa Jalla. That's not good manners. You can't have good manners with people and not have good manners with Allah. But if we have good manners with Allah and good manners with the people, then this is a level which is nothing is heavier on the scales, Yawm al-Qiyamah, than having good manners. Good manners. And the Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, I was only sent to complete, لِأُتَمِّمْ, to complete مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, to complete the most noble of manners towards Allah, towards the people. So we as Muslims balance that. We don't have good manners towards them. We don't just have good manners towards Allah and bad manners towards the people. We join between these two things. And when we join between these two things and we learn the manners of learning, because everything has its own manners, every sub-science has its, there's manners of learning, manners of the masjid, manners of the salam, manners of greetings, manners of gatherings, starting with the right hand side, manners of eating. There are a lot of etiquettes there, a lot of adab, a lot of etiquettes. And one of the most beautiful books you can study is Al-Adab al-Mufrad by Al-Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala. A lot of different types of manners. But when you have learned those manners, then you're really ready to embark on the actual thing that is your aim. So you've learned the manners of being in a gathering, now you're ready to go to a gathering and mix with the people. And you've learned the manners of knowledge and seeking knowledge. You're ready to go and learn and to take the maximum benefit from that. Whereas you see the students who haven't learned the manners of knowledge, what often you see them 10 years down the line and they're the same amount of knowledge as they had when they started or very similar. Because they didn't learn the manners of knowledge before they began. And it's narrated, for example, about the gatherings of Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah ta'ala, and many others, that more people used to come to learn manners than came to learn Islamic knowledge. Because the entrance level, the beginner's level 1 was about learning manners. People used to sit in the gatherings just to learn the manners of the speaker, and then to learn the knowledge. So I hope, inshallah ta'ala, we've given a little bit of inspiration. I didn't want to make this too long. We've given a little bit of inspiration to people as to why they should give attention to having good manners. And the good manners is not just, it's not just like please and thank you. Good manners is a big spectrum of how you behave towards people, what you should do and what you shouldn't do, your etiquettes. And that Islam has defined those etiquettes, just like culture may define those etiquettes, like you should always put the fork on this side and the spoon on this side, and you start with the spoon on the outside, then you eat with the spoon on the inside, and these cultural things people have. Islam has defined manners of eating, manners of drinking, manners of gatherings, manners of knowledge, manners with your teacher, manners with the student, manners, many different etiquettes and manners. And those are from among the most important things we can learn and we can convey to our children. But we need to be careful when we do convey them. We don't just convey manners with people, but we also convey manners with Allah Azza wa Jal, worshipping Him alone, the good etiquette, thinking good of Him, and all of the other things that we have to do towards Allah, so that we don't be like those people who are good to others, but they're not good towards their Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just a little bit of inspiration. And the brothers, I think, felt with regard to the masjid, this is something we can all work on. We can all be a little bit considerate, more considerate of each other, a little bit kinder towards each other, a little bit more connected with each other, knowing more about who is not well, maybe who needs something, a little bit more sort of together and sort of cohesive with each other. These are all things that we can, inshallah ta'ala, improve upon. And I hope that this is a little inspiration to get into something a bit more detailed, like Al-Adab al-Mufrad, or one of the books of adab, one of the books of manners and etiquettes that have been written. Do be careful that not every hadith narrated on the topic of etiquettes is authentic. Al-Adab al-Mufrad by Imam al-Bukhari is not just authentic hadith, so you do have to be careful to separate the weak from the authentic. But there are a lot of lessons that we can learn in how to behave, and certainly any of you who are thinking of pursuing, seeking Islamic knowledge and furthering yourself in Islamic knowledge, you must be careful also to begin by learning the manners of the student and how you should carry yourself. And that goes for hifz of the Quran as well. Any of you who are planning on memorizing the Quran, have started memorizing the Quran, I know Quran teachers who give as a gift to their students a book on how to have manners, the manners of the one who has memorized the Quran. What they call adab hamalatul Quran, or adab hamalatul Quran, the manners of the one who carries the Quran in their heart. It's all manners that we can learn, and I hope inshallah it's given something different for people. And we've studied a few ahadith as well. We haven't just done it from our, just as a talk. We've done it from some of the ahadith in Bulugh al-Maram. For those of you who are interested in continuing with Bulugh al-Maram, I have a series on it. I'm currently nearly finished Kitab al-Salah, the book of prayer. And it's available on the Kalima UAE, YouTube, K-A-L-E-M-A-H, UAE. And all of the lessons are on there. Mostly I think we have like well over 60, 70, whatever lessons on there, which have gone through the book from the very beginning. We started with water and purification and prayer and the different types of prayer. We're now finishing the prayer, and maybe within a couple of months we start the zakah, inshallah. And the aim is to finish the book. This bit we quoted was right from the very end of the book, because that is to the chapter that relates to al-adab, and manners and mannerisms. Okay, so I think, inshallah ta'ala, we will ask if anybody has any questions. It can be on the topic or off the topic. If I don't know the answer, I will say that's one of the etiquettes of the teacher. Is that if you don't know the answer to a question, you tell people, I don't know the answer to the question. Don't give them a half-baked answer. And I will try my best to answer if anyone has anything they would like to ask. I'm heading away again tomorrow, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, so it's been a very short trip. But I just was nice to get a little reminder in there. So does anybody have any questions they would like to ask about what we studied or about anything else, inshallah? Yes, Habib.
You said that Aisha radiallahu anha, that hadith about the Rasulullah character was the Quran. How is it weak, or can you elaborate on that?
The wording that most people quote, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ, that his manners were the Quran. This wording is not, to the best of my knowledge, it's not the correct wording. But there are a number of ahadith narrated with similar wordings from Aisha. So the chains, when you match them and you look them up, there are a lot of have similar wordings one way or the other. And some of them are authentic. So we say as a collective, sort of when we put them together, they reach the level of authenticity. But the famous one that people know, as I did a little bit of research on it, because I was going to quote it in a lecture of mine, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ, and that this one has some, the chain has something in it. But generally, as a whole, when you gather these ahadith together, similar ahadith have been narrated with similar kinds of wording. And I found the wording, but I don't recall it from the top of my head, the one that was more correct than the one that is commonly quoted that we sort of hear people say. But the meaning itself is inshallah ta'ala correct.
Sometimes we see non-Muslims, when they sneeze, people say bless you. Is it something which is allowed? And the second,
okay, go on.
The second question is, you mentioned Adab al-Mufrad by Imam Bukhari. Did you say that it's not only weak hadith, but it's also fabricated hadith?
No, Al-Adab al-Mufrad is a collection of, I'll answer the second one first, it's a collection of hadith, some authentic and some are not authentic.
Okay.
So, Al-Imam al-Bukhari is something that's very important for you to realize. Al-Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, didn't make all of his books like Sahih al-Bukhari. So a lot of people get confused with this one.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just for the sisters' benefit, could you repeat the questions because they don't listen to the question?
Yeah, no problem, inshallah. I think the question, inshallah, will become clear, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, as we answer. So this first question is about Al-Adab al-Mufrad. Al-Adab, we have to be careful that Imam al-Bukhari is well known for his Sahih, right? All the hadith in it are authentic. But the problem is that he wrote many books and he didn't apply the same conditions to those other books that he did to Sahih al-Bukhari. And some people trick you a little bit. They do something, it's not very good manners when we're talking about manners and etiquettes. It's not good academic manners. Is that they quote something and they say, Bukhari mentioned it. But when you look at where did Bukhari mention it, he mentioned it in Al-Tarikh al-Kabir, in Al-Adab al-Mufrad, and not in his Sahih, which is 100% authentic. So you have to be a little bit careful that when you say Bukhari mentioned it, did he mention it in his Sahih or he mentioned it in one of his other books? So Al-Adab al-Mufrad, I don't recall it having fabricated hadith in, but I don't recall every hadith in it. But I recall that there are some weak hadith in it. But he didn't require himself to only put authentic hadith in it. So you should look at which is authentic and which isn't. Remind me the first question you had.
When people sneeze.
Okay, so the non-Muslims. The non-Muslims in general, what is the ruling of dua for non-Muslims in general? It's not good manners with Allah to make dua for a non-Muslim in something that doesn't involve their guidance. So for example, if they're sick, you can say, Oh Allah, cure them and guide them, or cure them and make their cure a reason for them to be guided. But you shouldn't just say, oh Allah, cure them. Why? Because it's bad manners with Allah. You're asking this person to be cured. Okay, they start being cured. What are they going to do? They're going to go out and drink and eat haram and do haram and live haram and worship shaitan. And so you're asking Allah for something which there is no good in it. But if you say, oh Allah, cure them and make their cure a reason for them to be guided. Oh Allah, cure them and guide them, and so on. With regard to the sneezing, it would appear that this is the right of a Muslim, because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned it in Haqqul Muslimi ala al-Muslim, the right of the Muslim upon the Muslim. And I don't recall the scholars mentioning it with regard to the non-Muslim. So I don't recall what they said regarding saying something like bless you or something like that. But it is important generally when we make dua for non-Muslims that we make dua in the context of guidance. And we don't just say that, oh Allah, cure this person, or Allah, give them wealth. Especially if, they're going to use it for haram. Instead, we want to say, oh Allah, cure them, guide them, or Allah, enrich them and make it a reason for them to be guided, or Allah, guide them and help them. But it's very important that we have some form of guidance in there, so that we are asking Allah for something which is beneficial, and we're not asking Allah for something which is not beneficial. And that is an example of crossing the limits in dua. The scholars mention it under the topic of crossing the limit in dua. When you make dua for someone, for something which is not of any benefit. Some of the scholars give the example of rain in the summer. So it's in countries that are very, very hot, in desert countries. You make dua for rain in the summer. The rain lands, but the plants don't absorb the rain. The rain is just hot. It just burns off the floor. And nothing really, there's no real benefit to it. So you ask Allah for rain when the rain will benefit. And so likewise, when you're talking about a non-Muslim, you ask Allah for what is good for them, which is their guidance. And you don't ask Allah for something that's going to help them in the dunya, but not help them in the akhirah. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. I don't recall saying bless you to a non-Muslim. I don't recall that. I don't recall coming across one of the scholars mentioning it. But it's not from the rights of a non-Muslim to say, for example, this. What about the salam to a non-Muslim? So what about if a non-Muslim says to you, Assalamu alaikum? In this, there are one of two situations apply. Either you are absolutely confident that they said the proper salam to you, in which case you are permitted to reply back to them in full. If you don't know them or you don't really know what they said, and in this case you should really say to them, wa alaykum, and to you. Because they might have said, assalamu alaykum, or they might have said something else which is similar, which might be something rude or invoking something evil upon you or whatever. So sometimes you see them genuinely say it. Like someone will say, oh, I've learned, I wanted to say this to you because I've learned it, Assalamu alaikum. There's nothing wrong with you saying to them, wa alaikum assalam. But in general, with a non-Muslim, when they greet you with the salam, you say to them, wa alaikum, and to you. And you can say that in English as well sometimes to them if you feel that would help. If they say, for example, may Allah bless you, or sometimes they might say to you, Eid Mubarak, or something like that. They learn little words to say to you. You say to them, and may Allah give you the same, may Allah bless you and guide you, and some words like this. There is nothing wrong with responding to them in such a way. But it's not from the rights of the non-Muslim that you reply to the salam, or that you say to them, Yarhamkallah, if they sneeze or something like that. And Allah is doing it to us. But you do sometimes get, especially among non-Muslims who speak Arabic as their first language, often they've mixed with Muslim cultures so much that they will say to you, Assalamu alaikum, they will say to you, Alhamdulillah, when they sneeze and things like that. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best.
With regards to having good manners with people in general, considering non-Muslims, how do we deal with them when it comes to considering things like when you say backbiting, things are dictated in the Sharia regarding Muslims specifically, like giving them good advice not by biting your brothers, how do we deal with non-Muslims with respect to these things?
This is an excellent question. So how do we deal with non-Muslims with regard to things like backbiting, giving them advice, and the things that we would typically behave towards the Muslims? Allah Azza wa Jal told us that He has not prohibited us. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين. Those people who have not fought you on behalf of your religion, and they have not thrown you out of your homes, and تبروهم, that you should show bir towards them. What do we say? Bir is every kind of good. تقسطوا إليهم, and that you should be just towards them. إن الله يحب المقسطين. Allah loves those people who are just. So what does this tell us? It tells us that wherever possible, providing that Muslim is not an enemy of Islam who is trying to destroy Islam or harm Islam, and your bir is facilitating that. So you're actually helping them. You're actually, subhanAllah, you have someone who's trying to destroy Islam, and you being nice to them is helping them. Put them aside. We're going to say just the regular non-Muslim who is not, they're not trying to harm you or destroy your religion. They are regular people. There is nothing wrong with you fulfilling all of those aspects of bir, including not backbiting them, including giving them nasiha, including being kind to them, thinking about them, visiting them when they are sick. Because visiting when they are sick, the Prophet ﷺ visited non-Muslims when they were sick. He visited his uncle Abu Talib when he was on his deathbed, and he said, Ya Am, قُل لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, say La ilaha illallah. So there is nothing wrong with you doing those things. However, they don't have the same rights as a Muslim. So the non-Muslim can't say that it's my right upon you that you visit me when I'm sick. Or that it is my right, that you do not speak about me, for example, behind my back. However, Allah said, La yanhaakum, Allah does not forbid you. Meaning that Allah Azza wa Jalla has not made it haram. Neither is it necessarily an obligation for you to treat them the same way as you would treat a Muslim. But the more you can do bir towards them and kindness towards them, the more they are going to become endeared towards Islam and love Islam and want to think about Islam. As long as you accompany with some information about Islam. Sometimes people are just good manners, and the problem is people never know where those good manners come from. They say, oh, my neighbor's so good, well-mannered. What religion is he? I have no idea. Because then you never told them anything about Islam. But as long as they know a little bit about Islam and they see the good manners from you, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, that will make a big difference to them. And that is part of the bir that Allah has allowed you to do towards them. So the scholars mentioned this on backbiting. Allah Azza wa Jalla has specified backbiting as being to speak about your brother Muslim in his absence about what he would not like, which is true. However, it is also not right to speak about the non-Muslim that doesn't come under backbiting. It doesn't come under ghiba. The ruling doesn't apply. But you try not to do that because it may push them away from Islam, it may make them upset, it may make them feel negative about Islam. So you try not to do it based on the ayah about having bir, good treatment towards them and kindness towards them. That is, that's what is based upon, inshallah. Yes, Habib, go.
Every time people talk about good manners in Islam, all good things that Islam has, it's really good to listen to them. But my question is there any way you think we can also lessons from learn from the Sahaba on how we can make etiquettes in Islam more institutionalized currently? More Muslims.
Could you explain what you mean by more institutionalized?
Make it more common among Muslims.
Okay.
Most of the information is in books. Doesn't look like they are practiced very much.
That's an excellent question. So the brother said, are there lessons that we can learn from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum? That's the first excellent point in this question, because he said from the Sahaba. And they're the best people that we can learn from after the prophets and the messengers, is to learn from the Sahaba about how we can make these manners more common among people. I think that there are different ways to answer that question. I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to encourage people to implement their knowledge more. Because actually, if I were to ask you, how many of you knew that a Muslim has to give salam to another Muslim? Probably everyone in this room would have said, I did. How many of you, though, give that salam to every Muslim you meet? Now the number will go down. So it's an issue of knowing, but not really putting it necessarily into practice. So we need to be really strict on people in encouraging them. Don't just learn, but put it into practice. One of the things the Sahaba did is that they would not go beyond 10 ayat or 10 hadith without learning the meaning of them and implementing them. Meaning, instead of teaching our children, right, to this term you're going to memorize 200 hadith, we say to them, this term you're going to memorize 10 hadith and put them into practice. And when we see that you're putting them into practice, we're going to teach you 10 more. And they did this with the Quran. And when we see you putting them into practice, we're going to teach you 10 more. And I think this is one of the greatest ways that we could learn from the Sahaba about the practicalities of making it more common among people. Is literally to encourage people to implement it more than we do right now. Right now we get knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but we don't necessarily practice it. So with the children, one of the nice things you can do is to do this methodology of 10 by 10. And I thought about doing a class, if Allah makes it easy, 10 by 10 tafsir, where you take 10 ayat, you explain them, the kids understand them, you send them off to implement them, and when they started putting them into practice, you learn 10 more. Same with ahadith. The mother of Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah ta'ala, sent him and said to him, no, he's not from the Sahaba, from a couple of generations after that. She said to him, my son, go and learn 10 hadith. And if you see those 10 hadith change you, go and learn 10 more. So this methodology is better than just saying to people, let's all memorize 500 good manners in Islam. Let's memorize and let's go and put it into practice. This is one thing. The other thing is having this keenness to learn manners before you learn something. And often we don't teach this. We often teach like, okay, today we're going to learn about the science of hadith. Today we're going to learn about tafsir. But how many times do we see people say, today we're going to learn about the manners of learning, for example. The manners of the masjid. The first time you bring your child to the masjid, to teach them the etiquettes and the manners of the masjid. Entering with your right foot, praying tahiyyat al-masjid, not disturbing other people, standing in the rows, leaving with the left foot, and so on. You know, the etiquettes of the masjid. Not raising your voice, not shouting out for lost property. The etiquettes of the masjid when the first time they come to the masjid. So I feel this is something that we could also do a little bit. We could give a bit more attention to it. But I think one of the greatest examples we learn from the Sahaba specifically is this issue of not learning things until we implement them. Or learning, implement, learn, implement, learn, implement, instead of just learn. This is one of the big ways we can do it.
My question is, what's the best advice you can give us when it comes to manners from the parent toward the children?
That's a very good question. Manners of the parent towards the children. I have a full lecture on this topic, so I'm going to give you a brief answer, but I would also direct you to have a look for a lecture of mine. If you search on YouTube for Muhammad Tim and you search for Rights of the Children, I have a lecture called The Rights of the Children. Probably the greatest overall right, like the umbrella right of the child, in terms of the manners, is the tarbiyah, the right to be nurtured. The right to be nurtured, to be looked after, taken care of. At every stage in their life, you nurture them. And nurturing, it's like nurturing a seed or something like that. You know, you keep watering it, you keep it out of the sun, but you keep it enough sunlight for it to grow, and you keep adjusting it and moving it and tying it and feeding it and watering it until it grows strong. That's kind of the example we give when we talk about the nurturing of a child. And that's probably one of the greatest rights that a child has over their parent, is to nurture them. And that means that, you know, every phase in their life, to give them what they need to grow as a Muslim. That's maybe a good way, I think it's a good way of putting it. At each phase in their life, to give them what they need to flourish and grow as a Muslim. But there are certain etiquettes in terms of manners, and in terms of the parent towards the child. And one of those that comes to mind, it's not the only one, it's maybe not even the most important one, but it's one that does come to mind, is that we don't stop our children from something which is good for them. You know, sometimes the parents, we have a tendency, we might want to stop our children from something because we're not comfortable with it, or it's not what we would do, but it's something good for them. You know, maybe they want to marry someone who's not exactly what we had in mind. They're Islamically correct, but maybe it's not the culture we had, or the nationality that we had in mind, or something like that. And we stop them from that for no real reason, no real Islamic justification. It's more just that this is not what I had envisaged my child to do, or the job they want to take, or something like that. So it's important with our children that we don't unnecessarily stop them from something which is good for them in their religion and good for them in their dunya. We don't be too restrictive with them. And one of the etiquettes we have with our children, another etiquette of the parent towards the child, is that we build a friendship with our children. We don't just build the relationship with our children upon discipline and, I'm telling you what to do and you need to do what I tell you and I'm your father and you listen to me. And more a friendship of, tell me how you're feeling, tell me what's going through your mind, how can I help? That's the action of the murabbi, the nurturer, versus the disciplinarian, the one who is just disciplining the child all the time. These are just a few things that come to mind, but I mentioned a lot in that video on the rights of the children. So I think, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to stop now for the prayer. After the prayer, I believe I have to leave a little bit quickly, so I'll apologize if I don't get to give salam to everybody on the way out, inshallah ta'ala. It's one of the brothers is dropping me off and he needs to go a little bit quickly. We will stop there. As always, guys, wallahi, you guys are always in my dua, and you always remember you, subhanAllah. This is my hometown, my home masjid, and subhanAllah, I spend less time here than I do in many, many other places. And Allahumma musta'an. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, you see a bit more of me next year, inshallah ta'ala, I hope so. And you guys always know that you can take my contact details and information from the masjid administration, and you guys are always welcome to get in touch, inshallah, if you need anything. We always want to give you guys priority at the end of the day as much as we can. And this is what I had to share with you. Whatever good that I said and whatever khair that I said, that is the grace of Allah and His mercy. And whatever I got wrong, whatever I made a mistake in, then that is something that came from me. And Allah Azza wa Jalla and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam don't have anything to do with that. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا.